Hello, Synapse community. My name is Ryan Majitimer, and I'm a product manager on the Azure Synapse Analytics team. Welcome to the August edition of the Synapse MVP video series. Each month, I'm joined by an MVP, and we talk about a topic that they're passionate about. You may recall from last month that we were joined by Diponkar Paul to talk about static data masking. And believe it or not, Diponkar is actually back to talk about dynamic data masking. Welcome back, Diponkar.
Thanks, Ryan. Welcome, everyone. As Ryan mentioned, we covered static data masking in our last video. So today, we're going to learn what is dynamic data masking and how you can implement that. Part of the topic, I'll demonstrate granular level of dynamic data masking capabilities by using Azure Synapse Analytics. About myself, I'm Diponkar Paul, data platform MVP from Canada, and I'm working as a lead data engineer. Let's have a look. What does dynamic data masking means? Through this example, I will share record where you get the name, social insurance number, and salary of an employee. This data may come from your human resource system. As soon as this data move from your data lake and to the database, some group of or some people doesn't have the raw data. They cannot see the right data here. So this name has been masked, the social insurance number has been masked. Other group of people, as you see, they have access to the raw data. They can see all the data. And further down this to this diagram, if you see here, when the same data actually consumed by Power BI or any other application, the one group of people cannot see the data, whereas other group of people can see the full raw data. Also, if you look at in this diagram, the data remain as it is. We are applying that dynamic data masking. Some individual or some group can see the data and some individual or group cannot see the data. That is where dynamic data masking plays a role. Through the dynamic data masking, you can limit who can see your sensitive data and who cannot see your data. There are three different ways you can implement dynamic data masking. One, in your dedicated SQL pool, you can set up schema level dynamic data masking where only who has access to those schema can able to see the sensitive data, for example. Also, you can set up the permission to table level. When you set up this dynamic data masking to the table level, intended user will only have access to that table, not anything else. Even more granular to the column level. So if your table have like 10, 15 columns, you can choose, okay, these 3 or 4 columns can be only seen to this group of people. Let's start the demo. At the very first step, what you need to go is you need to go to the portal.azure.com, like I'm doing it. Com. Since we're gonna look at that Synapse workspace, we're going there. As you see, what our interested demo is dynamic data masking. So we need to go to our dedicated SQL pool. As soon as you click there on the left side, as you see, there is a tab called dynamic data masking. As soon as you click it, and you see some of the tables here, this schema, this table, column, and mask function. So you see, these are the tables. I have already added those columns considered for masking. And this area, as you see, these are recommended field to mask. Let's get back to the database. Let's see, we connected the database here. This is the Synapse workspace, and this is the database names, and exactly the same database we have created here, SQL pool. And if I make query, this is I'm just selecting the employee tables, dependent table, and the jobs table. And if I hit that F5 button, and I see I'm able to see everything, right? So though those columns are encrypted, but I can see those all the sensitive data like salary, email address, first name, last name. As a DV owner, should be able to see everything and anything. Let's use this user as the intended user. This only make the query to employees and dependents table.
As long as I do that, this will still able to see that data. The reason for it is if we go back to the portal, intended user has been excluded from this. So it means intended user will still able to see the data. Administrator are always excluded. That's likewise I was DB owner, and then intended user will also able to see the data. Now let's make the query with the other user, which is like unintended user. The execution, and see this first name, last name, email address, those are all encrypted. See this same here, first name, last name, you're not able, so unintended user is not able to see that data. Here we go back, from the suggested column, we add employee's phone number. This phone number has been added. Let's save it. We go back, make the query again with the unintended user. Because earlier, as you see, the phone number column is still showing here, right? So we expect, as since we have chosen as a mask column, we should not able to. Okay, what happened to this? See, phone number, it has been masked. What you're gonna do is we're gonna go through the granular level of dynamic data masking. If you remember, there were three different type of it. So one is one of the schema level. So think about, we have the HR manager, right? So HR manager should have more privilege than other role. For here, what we'd like to do is HR manager would like to give him or her permission specific to the schema. So here, let's see what is his or her access now. HR manager is not able to see any sensitive data. Those other table, maximum minimum salary is not able to see at all. Now what you can do is we can apply this role to dynamic data masking, or I say grant unmask on schema we're talking is DBO, and to this role we're saying this HR manager was not able to see that earlier, but now HR manager will able to see that. Let's execute this. Now we come back and run the same query. For the DBO schema, HR manager should able to see the data. Okay, looks good. See, HR manager able to see the data. But interestingly, what happened? Minimum salary and maximum salary is still showing the 0, 0 is the masked one because their schema is different, right? So if you look at, this is DS schema. We only applied this unmasked to DBS schema. That's the reason. Still for the DSG jobs table for HR manager, the data is masked. Okay, let's have a look at the second granular level of dynamic data masking, which is table level. We have HR employee as a user we already created, and we'd like to see how HR employee behave. Does he or she have it already access or not? HR employee cannot see the data, it's all masked, as you see, masked, email address masked, and everything is masked actually, all other table. What you're going to do is we're going to grant unmask on one particular table. We're talking about now tables to this HR employee. Let's execute that. Now we're going to see what happened. DB or dependent table, HR employee able to see it. Okay, that is what you got as expected. So employee table still masked, everything is masked as expected, but this dependent table, see, is shown here. Same DS jobs, this is a mask because we only applied that unmask for this employee to one particular tables. Now let's look into other scenario. We're gonna do the column level dynamic data masking. So we have data science user. Let's see how this user have access to the data. Everything actually is masked. As you see, everything is masked. We're gonna go and apply two rules here. One is we are unmasking to the only to the data science DS schema, and also we're unmasking few different columns to the employee tables. So first name and last name. So when you apply that, as soon as you apply it, hit the execute button. We have applied the rules. Our expectation is data science schema should be shown. What happened? See? Okay, data science. See this table. the user is able to see that minimum maximum salary. Also, what he did is employee tables, two different columns, first name and last name. This user able to see it. The user is not able to see email, phone number, even the other table like the dependent table. See, is not able to see it.
And this is how you do granular level of dynamic data masking by using Azure Synapse Analytics.
It's great learning about the dynamic data masking in Azure Synapse. We've gone over the granular level of dynamic data masking for dedicated SQL pools. But the question is, what about dynamic data masking for Azure SQL DB?
Thanks, Ryan. Yes, it is possible to implement the same dynamic data masking by using Azure SQL database. I did actually for both Azure SQL database and dedicated SQL pool. When you will create the table, those DDL will be a bit different. Beside that, the same syntax I have shown will work in your Azure SQL database too.
Thanks for joining us today, Diponkar, and telling us about dynamic data masking. Tell us in the comments, do you use dynamic data masking? If you don't use it, you think it's something that you could use in the future? Again, my name is Ryan Magitimer. You can find me on Twitter. You can find Azure Synapse on Twitter, Azure_Synapse. You can also find Diponkar on Twitter, Paul, SWENGRR. Also, speaking of social media, the Azure Synapse Azure Synapse Influencer Program is really what I'm getting at here. It's a very fun and cool and exciting program where we talk to each other, we use hashtags, there's rewards, titles, there's events, Q&As. Occasionally you get to ask me questions, though usually I deflect to the other cool people on my team. It's very fun and exciting. You should join. You can find information about that in the description of this video. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.